Friday night fireworks, the next two, actually the last Friday night in July, DC. Can't believe it. Summer is absolutely flying by us. Baseball season just a little more than halfway through, and we've got 13 games tonight on DraftKings. So we're going to keep the talk to a minimum. Of course, as always, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, say hello, ask about a particular player or team. But DC, 13 games. The only weather that I saw, perhaps Kansas City, looks like it's more serious than some of the other spots. You got anything that stands out to you on the Friday night weather report?
No, nothing too serious. Some rain in the area on the East Coast games, but they do look like they're going to play fine to me. Kansas City probably gets it in too. Not that I think that's a game that you really need to go to in either way on a 13-game slate. So obviously, the more games there are, the more cautious I think you can be on the weather stuff. So we'll keep an eye on that. Of course, we'll be in the Discord, all that stuff, answering questions. But yeah, 13 games, a lot to talk about. A little different edition of the Friday night fireworks show. Boynton and Stats both getting after it at the golf final with JBC. So we'll run it back from yesterday and hopefully deliver the goods to the people, JT.
If it wasn't a 13-game slate, I would want to talk about the fact that Boynton is out of town while his girlfriend is going to a costume party on a boat this weekend. It doesn't seem like the optimal strategy for a couple. But look, I mean, they've been together a while. I am sure everything's going to be fine because of the character of the people involved. But it's 13 games, so we can't dwell on that. We'll have to wait for a shorter slate to see how it works out. DC, let's get right into it with the Colorado Rockies minus Ryan McMahon traded to the Yankees today. So really the only bat that you're ever kind of afraid of against a right-handed pitcher, now without him, now on the road in Baltimore, it is Kyle Freeland for 5,500 facing off against the Orioles. And Dean Kramer, who has been pretty good, price now up to $8K. That's derived because of this matchup with the Rockies, who do virtually nothing on the road. First game of the night here, maybe looking at a slight late start, but that's about it, DC. Break it down for us, the Orioles and the Rockies.
Yeah, I think we get to one of the better pitching options of the slate right away here with Dean Kramer, who, like you mentioned, has pitched much better recently. I still don't think he's, again, not going to win a Cy Young Award anytime soon, but he has gone 7 innings in each of his last 2. And I believe in 4 of his last 6, he's made it 7 full innings. So Orioles obviously have some trust in him. He's also on an extra day's rest. And, I think you can hope for 6+ innings out of Dean Kramer against the Rockies, which, if you face that many Rockies hitters, you're probably going to get your 5, 6, 7+ strikeouts along the way. Almost every pitcher that faces the Rockies, especially away from Coors and especially thrown from the right side, does get those strikeouts in the end, even if it's not a totally clean outing for Dean Kramer. So I don't love the pitching in general on the slate, but you have to like Kramer here, the best spot of the season, arguably for him. He's pitching, at the top of his game. Yeah, why not? With Dean Kramer probably going to get the run support, obviously, against Kyle Freeland. So I do think right off the bat we have one of, if not the best pitching option on the slate. It's, it's still Dean Kramer, and he's chalk, and he's not particularly cheap. So you never know for sure. But I think on paper, you have to like Dean Kramer here. I'm off the Rockies. Just 13 games, better spots to go to, in my opinion. And then the Orioles, I think, are a little bit interesting against Freeland, who he is better away from home, but I still think you can target him. Some of this right-handed power, Westberg, Laureano's been on fire. Tyler O'Neill's cheap. We know he has power and speed. I think that middle of the Orioles lineup looks pretty good, but mostly it's Dean Kramer for me. See some, Jake saying Kramer chalk is gross. I can see that argument, but I think he's going to come through here. Kind of like Luis Severino yesterday. The spot was right for him. Sometimes you got to play into the chalk a little bit. So I'm on the Dean Kramer chain here myself.
Yeah, it's not like he's chalk against a really good offense or even a mediocre offense. And if you look at the pitching on this slate and take what they've done since about June 20th, June 21st, Kramer ranks in the top 6. He's actually 6. He's got a 24% strikeout rate against major league teams. Now he gets to face the Rockies. So the price is a little something that you're like, whoa, that's surprising for Dean Kramer. But DC, I think it's been maybe 6 weeks ago now that I just decided to throw logic out the window when it comes to the Rockies and generally just play the opposing pitcher. If you know that that pitcher is going to get to 100 pitches, that's what Dean Kramer usually does. So AK Dean Kramer in play. A chunk the deuce wants to play Kyle Freeland on this slate. There's just not enough upside there for me, DC. I get that he's 5,500. I think his upside is like 16, 17 points. And maybe that's enough on a 13-game slate where we don't love the pitching. There's not a lot of slam dunk matchups, but I do think there's enough other pitchers at the top end that can put up 25 to 35 fantasy points that I don't really want to mess with Kyle Freeland on this slate. So those are my opinions on this game. Any final thoughts here before we move on?
Just briefly on Freeland, I did see the comment as well. Looked at Freeland. He has been considerably better on the road away from Coors, which you would expect. And there are also, potentially at least a lot of strikeouts in this Orioles lineup. So I don't think he'll get to Freeland either, but I can see it at 5,500 if you got, maybe you're trying to stack the Dodgers or the Cubs or the Yankees. They are expensive. I think the best offenses on the slate are the expensive ones. So I can see it from that perspective, especially if you're playing multiple lineups.
Uncle T says, can't wait to tell Big T that JT is banging on his core play Freeland. I haven't looked at anybody's scores, so I can honestly say if I've said
anything. Big T's got his core up already. I mean, we're 2 hours before.
I don't think there's a shot in hell. I know that he does like to play Kyle Freeland. He likes to play. And then it's not
maybe Terry and Tony had lunch today at the local chicken finger place, and maybe Big T reveals his core early to Uncle T. So it could be
maybe I forget the name of the pizza place that's so tasty when we go to visit the knee houses, but maybe he said, I can't wait to play my guy Kyle Freeland at 5,500 against the Orioles. Awesome. I don't know. That's something that he could have said. Yeah. I will say that you and I seem to be aligned that he's more likely going to get unchecked in our pools than find his way in. So, but again, it could work out. All right, let's move on. Got a lot of games to get through here, and we spent more than enough seconds on Kyle Freeland.
Yeah.
Next game in the Bronx, it is the Phillies and the Yankees. Taijuan Walker, 6,700 against these Yankees. And the Yankees, they are expensive unless you want to play Oswald Peraza or some of these other guys. Well, I will say Anthony Volpe seems to have found his hitting stroke. For the Yankees, DC, Will Warren, 7,300. Been a roller coaster for Will Warren. The 7,300 price here stood out to me when I looked at it. Of course, he's coming off a kind of a down start against the Braves in Atlanta. It was very hot. It was very muggy that night. And it was when the Braves had this little bit of a almost hot streak going. That's well over now. But 7,300 against the Phillies, it's an intriguing spot for Warren at low ownership. I certainly am interested in seeing what he looks like in some of my lineups, just because he's had a tendency, even against decent hitting teams that strike out a bunch, to get those strikeouts. I think the Phillies fall into that category. They certainly do have a lot of boom bust hitters here. No interest for me in Taijuan Walker. Yankees going to be the most popular team offensively on this slate. DC, they were pretty cold in Toronto. Now they come back home. I guess we like to play them maybe a little more at home. But if they're going to be 10% or more on a 13-game slate, I know you like them, but looking at a 150 mix, I may go under the Yankees on this slate just because of what they've been doing lately. Keep it to two-mans and see what happens with that. But what are your thoughts here on the Phils and the Yanks?
Yeah, mostly offense here for me. I get the some Warren love at low ownership, low price tag. I do think he's better overall than a $7,300 price tag that he has on DraftKings. But yeah, the matchup, I mean, the hitting weather, the hitting conditions here look really, really good. Going to be mid to upper 80s, humid, and wind blowing out in Yankee Stadium, which means especially the lefties in this park with the short right field porch, wind blowing that way. It's not going to take much to get one out to right field in this stadium. And there's a lot of left-handed power on both teams. Obviously for the Phillies, mainly Schwarber and Harper, who I do think are two of the best one-offs on the slate. And also, of course, a mini stack, hitting 2 and 3 in the order. I really, really like that for Philly against Warren, who has pretty severe splits. The strikeout rate goes way down against lefties, gives up a ton of power to lefties. And I think the matchup for both Schwarber and Harper looks very strong, both against the pitcher and the stadium, how it should play today. So I'm in on those guys. And, even if you, like you said, maybe the Yankees aren't your top stack, or maybe you think they're going to be a little bit more owned on a huge slate than they should be. But, anyone would have to acknowledge big upside against Taijuan Walker, who is not a good pitcher, kind of hanging on by a thread to a big league rotation. And we know, the power that the Yankees have in the lineup. We just talked about how this stadium is going to play. Probably mostly sticking to the top 5 of the Yankees order for me. But then, Volpe down there at 3,400 is a talented player, and maybe finally turning it around here as we get into late July. So you can include him if you want, mostly sticking to the sluggers at the top of the Yankees order. And then Schwarber and Harper, I do think, are pretty elite plays. Not going to get to either of these pitchers myself, though.
All right. We'll move on to Cincinnati, the next spot here. Tampa Bay heading in there. Zach Littell, 7,600. Nick Martinez, 7K. Tough for me to get excited about either one of these pitchers. Littell is probably still a little bit too expensive for what his possible upside is, just the way that Tampa manages their pitching staffs. And, of course, it's going to be hot and humid in Cincinnati. Uncle T is here. Instead of talking smack about Will Warren, Uncle T, talk to us about the weather and what you expect to see out at the Great American Small Park tonight, since you're gracing us with your presence while DC talks about the game.
Yeah, it looks like another one where it would be hitting that I would focus on here. If I was choosing between Littell and Martinez, it would be Littell. And obviously another good park to hit in, one of the best home run parks in baseball, hot, humid, similar weather to New York. Ball's going to be flying. Interesting thing about Tampa, it's not really a big park upgrade for them, right? They kind of got a park that plays similarly, that they play their home games in. So some teams go to Cincinnati rather, and you give them kind of a big bump. Not necessarily the case for the Rays. Nevertheless, though, against Nick Martinez, kind of an average arm. I do think this Rays team is interesting. Aranda, Caminero, Yandy Diaz. That heart of the Rays order is dangerous and doing a lot of damage really all season, but especially over the last month or so. So I do really like that 2, 3, 4 for the Rays, assuming that that'll be the order that they roll out there. Against Littell, mostly looking at Ellie De La Cruz. The red stack is not high on my personal list, but this park is, anytime you can get low-owned stacks in Great American Ballpark against pretty mediocre pitching, I think that's at least worth considering. But red's not the top of my list. I do prefer the Rays side, and I'm not using either of these pitchers. I'm on the same page with you there.
Yeah, look, all you have to do is think about what happened in Tampa this week with the Tampa Bay Rays bullpen and the Chicago White Sox. And if the Chicago White Sox could put up 4 or 5 runs on this bullpen almost every game in Tampa, I tend to think that the Reds can at least do the same thing. Like you said, not a park upgrade, but certainly not a massive downgrade in terms of going into one of the more hitter-friendly fields in Major League Baseball. Let's move on. Again, drop any questions you have in the chat. Thank you, Uncle T, for the weather report there. He got in from his afternoon jog. And after they used the jump on him to get him back into life, he is now talking about a game stack at the Great American Small Park.
Maybe Uncle T and Big T, they both jogged to the restaurant before lunch and jogged at home.
Yeah.
I would love to see a short video of Uncle T and Big T out for a run in the Cincinnati heat and humidity.
Maybe something similar to what Randone posted so many years ago, right? Something like that. A little power video here. But Uncle T, I give you credit. I think you could jog somewhere. I don't believe the same is true for your nephew. So I am I am giving you the benefit of the doubt.
You got Terry in the race over Tony.
Right. There you go. He says he can run anywhere we want. All right. Next game is in Detroit, and I said DC last night that I was going to have more Toronto than the field. I did by just a little bit, because then I started talking about the park, and we shouldn't do that because I know that really doesn't matter all that much. And then, Toronto just puts up, 11, 12 runs, whatever it was. But we got a rematch of that. Now it's Jose Barrios at 7,400, Kiter Montero at 6,200. The Tigers sliding big time. Not impressed with Montero, nor the way that the Tigers use him, which is just not a lot of it. They like this guy to go like 60, 70 pitches. And they get the bullpen. Now, maybe he's got a little bit more length tonight because of how the Blue Jays beat up on the bullpen. But I think on any given slate right now, you have to say the Blue Jays offense is in play here. What are you thinking about for the Tigers and the Jays?
I'm with you. This Blue Jays offense looks pretty good to me. I do think there's a pretty substantial amount of pinch hit risk in the lineup, specifically Loper Fido and Nathan Lukes look like they could be potentially pinch hit for in this game. But the heart of the Jays lineup, which is doing most of the damage, Springer, Vlad, Bo, Barger, Kirk, 2 through 6 there. I think you got to consider these guys most nights, and including against Kiter Montero. I think people will look at, the park here. It's not a great place to hit in Detroit. No question about it. But this is the type of team that can still get it done as a stack. They make a ton of contact in general, and then Montero can't strike anybody out. So, these Blue Jays are going to be putting the ball in play. Montero walks guys. This could be one where you kind of get the merry-go-round, rolling here, turn the lineup over. Maybe these guys get 5 at-bats each and kind of get there, not via the long ball necessarily, but, 2-3 hits a piece I could see coming through for Toronto. So I'm with you on the Blue Jays. I assume they'll be somewhat low-owned. I think they are a good stack tonight. If I was choosing one, it would be Addison Barger swinging from the left side. But like I said, that 2 through 6 for the Blue Jays, all of them look good to me. I think that's what you want to focus on if you're going to Blue Jays stacks. On the other side, I don't think I'm playing Jose Barrios here at 7,400. I don't think he's an awful play. That's a fair price point for him. Decent place to pitch, like we mentioned. But I do think there are better options. And then it would be the lefty power that I always look at with Barrios. Riley Green, top of the list. I don't see myself going to too many Tigers here. It's pretty rare for Barrios to get absolutely crushed. I think you're going to need a big score, obviously, on a 13-game slate. I don't think the Tigers are going to be the answer to that question, but yeah, crazier things have happened, of course.
Yeah, Barrios definitely not at the top of my list. To be determined whether or not I actually leave him in the pool.
Yeah.
And limited interest in the Tigers. Wherever they fall in terms of the stacks is probably where I'll leave them around the field. Move on to the next game. It's in Boston. The Dodgers head into Fenway Park. Emmett Sheehan, 6,400. He's actually pitched well, DC, but with these young pitchers, you never know exactly the length that they're going to have in any given game. And then for the Red Sox, it's Brian Bello, 7,800. And there's a storyline here with the Dodgers, DC, because Mookie Betts not in the lineup again, expected to now rejoin the Dodgers in Boston on Saturday. He's been out for personal reasons, and it's to be determined when he's going to be back in the lineup. So there's some things going on with this Dodgers team. They've been struggling. They've been, playing fairly poorly. The bullpen has been giving up a ton of runs. Got to believe, though, at some point these guys are going to turn it around. What are you thinking about here in Boston?
Yeah, Brian Bello, definitely some talent in that right arm of his, but he is a guy that seems to kind of melt down when things don't go well for him. He seems like a little bit of a front runner. He had that awesome game, you remember, against the Rockies, of course, but he does seem prone to blow-ups. This could certainly be one. Really good hitting conditions in Fenway Park. Obviously, the Dodgers have a ton of talent. Ohtani, Smith, Freeman, Teoscar, Pages, all those guys can do a ton of damage. I mean, to be honest, Mookie Betts hasn't been very good with the bat this year, so him out of the lineup is not some death knell for the Dodgers lineup. Ohtani, as always, leads the way, but I really do like that top five, especially for the Dodgers. And they're one of the reasons why maybe you would spend down a little bit at starting pitching to fit in a stack like the top five Dodgers. Although, outside of Ohtani, these guys are reasonably priced. Freeman down at 4,300, really good price point for him. He can go the opposite way in Fenway. Good hitters umpire here as well. So I like the Dodgers for sure against Bayo. And I kind of like the Red Sox a little bit too. I think we're going to see offense in this game overall. Fenway, when you get these conditions, it usually does play very hitter friendly. And yeah, the Red Sox look pretty good to me too. The lefties, Duran, Anthony, Abreu down there in the 7 hole. He'll go overlooked, but he's been a monster against right-handed pitching this year. We got Yoshida back in there. So all offense here for me. I do lean the Dodgers slide slightly, but no interest in Bayo. Maybe you could talk me into Emmett Sheehan. I wasn't really looking at him super closely, mostly because I do expect runs in this game. But 6,400, talented pitcher. I guess maybe you could go there. But for me, mostly offense here, JT.
Yeah, I'm not on these pitchers particularly either. In terms of offense, I kind of go the other way. I kind of lean on the Red Sox side, just based on what I've been seeing out of the Dodgers pen more recently. But that will be it for the Boston game. We'll move on now to St. Louis. This one, an unexpected shootout, maybe last night, I guess, DC, between the Cardinals and the Padres. Of course, the Cardinals, woeful in Colorado. They get home and all of a sudden they're hitting like they're in Colorado or Tampa Bay last night. Tonight, it's Nick Pivetta at 10-2 against Miles Mikolas at 6,500. I cannot imagine playing Mikolas, and I think I'm fading Pivetta on this slate as well, DC, with the price and the matchup against the Cardinals team. Not that I'm worried about a replay of last night, just the strikeouts not being there as much as I'd like. What are you doing with the Cards and Padres?
Yeah, similar thoughts. I mean, yesterday on the show, we talked about Sonny Gray kind of being chalk, just out of default, not out of him being really a 10K pitcher, or certainly the matchup wasn't great against the Padres. And this game had a lot of runs right away, right out of the gate. Yeah. And I mean, part of that was how this park was playing weather-wise. It's going to be similar, very hot, very humid. This park does play more hitter-friendly in those conditions, which has me off of Pivetta. If I had to choose, I'd certainly pay up for Pivetta over using Mikolas. I think Mikolas is completely off the board today at 6,500. Would rather use Sheehan, even Kyle Freeland. Don't use Mikolas. There's a low strikeout matchup. He's a low strikeout pitcher. I just don't see it going well for him. Do you think that the Padres are interesting against Mikolas? They're going to put the ball in play. Ball should be flying here pretty well. They obviously had a pretty good night last night too. So I like the Padres some as I think a somewhat sneaky stack. Not going to get to the Cardinals, but 10-2 for Pivetta in a low strikeout matchup on the road. Tough pitching conditions. Kind of out on Nick Pivetta. I mean, I think I'd take Dean Kramer just straight up. And then you factor in a $2,200 discount. Hard for me to get to much Pivetta here. So really it's the Padres bats is the main thing that I'm looking at here. They are a team kind of like the Blue Jays, where if you use them, I think you mostly want to go for the full stack and hope that they can string a bunch of hits together. Even in this weather, it's still not a great home run park. But you could absolutely see them, finding the gaps and really getting the whole lineup going against Mikolas. That wouldn't shock me whatsoever. So I do like the Padres as a somewhat sneaky stack here, JT.
I like the Padres for mini stacks here and certainly one-offs. The issue with the Padres as a five-man is they had about as good an outcome offensively last night as they're going to have. And on a 4-game slate, they weren't on the winner, right? It was Tatis and it was Machado, the two guys that are in there. I just don't know that all these guys at these prices are going to put it all together in the same game. So, look, it could work out, but I think I'm going to be lower on 5-man. Certainly want to have a lot of these individual bats strung throughout many of my lineups. All right, next spot is up to Chicago Cubs heading in to play their not crosstown rivals, but certainly their crosstown partners there. It is Shota Imanaga at 9,900 DC against the White Sox. Adrian Hauser, 8,500. This is not the same park as Wrigley Field is for sure. It's just not as hitter friendly. It is a little warm. It's 80 degrees in Chicago, but not a lot of wind blowing out. It seems like it's a pretty light wind night here. 10K for Imanaga is a little bit tough for me with the way that some of these White Sox are not so much hitting the ball, but not striking out as much as maybe you would expect a Rockies team to. And that price tag seems a little high. Not in on Hauser myself. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah. The Cubs, I mean, they're really expensive, right? Like, priced at kind of, they've earned these price tags, but there's no discount here. I mean, 5,600 for Bush, 6,300 for Tucker, 5,800 for Crow Armstrong. I mean, really the whole lineup is, overpriced is too far, but again, no discount. That said, though, I still do like these guys. Against Hauser, you got one of the worst bullpens in baseball behind him. You've got the guaranteed full 9 innings for the Cubs. It seems like they're going to do some damage here to Hauser and then get into the bullpen. Hauser, pretty big splits, gets crushed by lefties. So, Bush, Tucker, Crow Armstrong, Happ. I mean, there's a lot of pretty good lefties in this lineup. Reese McGuire, you can play him down there in the 8-hole if you need a savings at catcher. I like the Cubs quite a bit. And it's one of the themes of this slate, at least for me, JT. I like these expensive offenses, the Cubs, the Yankees, the Dodgers. I'm in on the Cubs here if I can fit them in. It's certainly not easy to do so, but I do think they're going to do a lot of damage here to the White Sox. Whether it's enough to get on the winner, we'll see on that. Imanaga, I think he's interesting here. This park does look like it's going to play favorable to home runs, but there's not a lot of power in that White Sox lineup. No Luis Robert, who would have been one of, if not the biggest threats to Imanaga, probably getting traded, frankly, with the trade deadline coming up here would be my guess. Seems like he'd be in there otherwise. I'm kind of, I guess, neutral on Imanaga. Not my favorite play. Certainly, a viable play. He's pitched well these last 2 times, and it is a good matchup. So I get it with Imanaga. I just don't play him all that often, but maybe I should play him more. He's had obviously a pretty good season, good career, and the matchup certainly is good here. So, wouldn't fault anyone for playing Imanaga. Just find myself leaning a little bit of a different direction. Don't see much, though, that I want to play on the White Sox. Chase Meadroth leading off, cheap price point. I think he's probably the best way to go, but kind of an unexciting play anyway.
Yeah, and at least with Imanaga, he is back up to full pitch count strength, 7 innings last couple times out. It's just a 10K price tag for me that kind of doesn't really get my interest at that lower strikeout rate. But again, as we talked about, we're not in love with the pitching on this slate. So we'll see. Let's move on. Next game in Texas, the Braves, who we spoke about earlier, head into Texas. Joey Wentz at 6K is going to get the start here for Atlanta. I think they're ramping up his pitch count little by little to see what he can give them, given all the injuries on that pitching rotation. And he will take on Nathan Eovaldi at 9,600. What are you looking at here in this game in Texas?
Yeah, I like Eovaldi here against the Braves. Obviously, a disappointing season for them overall. I don't know. It's like call it a hunch, but I just feel like the Braves going into the indoor stadium in Texas is kind of I think a little bit of a dead place to play baseball, especially compared to what the Braves usually get. Just seems like a game that they're not going to show up in a big way for. Eovaldi's been really good these last few starts. Did get up to 102 pitches last time out, 8 strikeouts against the Astros in that one. And we've seen Eovaldi go on some pretty good runs. Seems like he's close to the top of his game right now. Very pitcher-friendly umpire as well for Eovaldi. I like him here. I like Eovaldi quite a bit. I like him more than Imanaga, who we just talked about for sure. And I think he'll be lower owned. It looks like they could be similar, 20%. Eovaldi going to be the higher owned of the two, which I guess makes sense to me. But I do like him. Think he'll pitch well, and not expecting a good game from the Braves here. So I'm off the Braves bats in this one. Wentz, not planning to use Joey Wentz even at 6K. Not super excited to use these Rangers bats either in this stadium. We got hot weather almost everywhere on the slate. These guys got to play indoors. It's a pitcher's park. Kind of just mostly out on this game other than Eovaldi, who I do think is one of the better pitching plays on the slate.
Yeah, with you on Eovaldi. Austin Riley's back, but Austin Riley has a hole in his swing all season long. And it's clear for the Braves, this season is pretty much over. They're not going to buy. They're not going to sell. These guys are just stuck for the next couple of months playing baseball every day, knowing that they're not going to get into the postseason. So I don't mind Texas Minis on this slate. I think with the rumors that maybe Raisel Iglesias and a couple of other bullpen pieces maybe on the move, that you could get some of the weaker bullpen pieces here for the Braves. So not all that upset about that. And then, like you, in on Eovaldi here. Probably one of my higher owned pitchers on this slate, as I've been doing on most slates where the Braves are on it. Next game in Kansas City. This is the weather game, DC, that we talked about. Gavin Williams coming off his best game of the season at 8,100. Michael Wacha, 7,700. He hasn't been particularly great recently, but he has had some good games this season. And then, of course, the old Guardians are kind of, I guess, still alive, but really not an inspiring offense. What are you looking at here in this game, if anything, given the weather concerns?
Yeah, rain coming to Kansas City right now. Most likely, I think this game will play, but it is definitely going to be one that we have to keep an eye on. If you're going out and doing something on Friday night, maybe you just cross this game off and you don't have to worry about the weather. I think that's really viable for anyone, but I would certainly understand that. Gavin Williams, like you said, coming off really a brilliant game, 11 strikeouts against the A's. This is kind of the pitcher he is. He does have the upside. You can see it when you watch him pitch. The stuff is there. But most of the time, it doesn't go that well for Gavin Williams. So I'm out on him, especially with any weather concerns. I don't think I would be playing Gavin Williams anyway. Not going to risk it with the weather. Wacha, I think he'd be like a pretty decent floor play if there weren't weather concerns here. It is a really good matchup for sure against the Guardians, who, outside of Jose Ramirez, this team just does not have much danger in the lineup for opposing pitchers. So Wacha probably pitches well. He probably gets 15 fantasy points here, weather permitting. Not sure that's enough at 7,700. And obviously any pitcher carries risk that it won't go well. So I'm not really going to play much from this game on my 5 teams. JT, just nothing stands out good enough to be worried about the weather. I don't see any premier plays anyway. So, kind of a cross-off game for me, honestly.
All right. 4 games left here to go through. Chat is interested in some wild things. Once again, anyone other than Beanair Myers, somebody named the kid, with questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat and we'll get to them. Otherwise, you're going to be ignored. The next game, DC, is in Houston. Another indoor game. This one, the A's and the Astros. Jeffrey Springs, 6,900 against Ryan Gusto, 6,600. Carlos Cortez, flat 2K, leading off here for the A's. Maybe a little better lineup than what we saw last night with Jacob Wilson back in there. And then looks like a little better lineup than we saw last night for the Astros as well. What are you doing with this game?
I'm off the pitching here for sure. No Springs or Ryan Gusto for me. It does stand out, Gusto's splits. He's one of the guys that has, it appears, really like legitimate lefty-righty splits where he's been really effective against right-handed bats and very, very ineffective against lefties. 380 xWOBA allowed to lefties on the season, one of the higher marks that you'll see from any pitcher against any handedness. So it makes sense that the lefty Cortez leading off here, flat 2K. I believe he's a pinch hitter too. So I think should be probably safe from pinch hit risk. I don't know that much about Cortez, but I would guess that he'll be in there the whole game. He'll be really popular at 2K, but the matchup is good. And I mean, it's hard to argue with that 2K price tag. So Cortez, any lineup that I need the savings in, I have no problem using him, especially hitting in front of big Nick Kurtz, who I think is one of the better plays on the entire slate. Probably drives in Cortez once or twice in this one. Kurtz will be someone that I'm prioritizing. And then, I'll go down to the other lefties in the A's lineup, Soderstrom and Butler, along with Cortez, Kurtz. That's mostly where I'm looking at with the A's. For the Astros, I think it's the right-handed power you want. And I do think their two best options, maybe three best, are right at the top of the lineup. Cam Smith, Altuve, Caratini. If you want to go down to a Walker, even though he's struggling, Yainer Diaz, they're cheap enough where I think you can use those guys too. So I think it may be a sneaky game for offense here. I'm off the pitching, and I do think we see some power in this game, probably from both sides. So I like the hitters, against the platoon guys, the righties against Springs, the lefties against Ryan Gusto.
Don Pla, he's a proud Canadian. He asks if we would play Freeland and Springs in large field. And I've said I don't think I'm playing any Freeland. So it's unlikely that I would play them together in large field. And if I have any Springs, it's going to be field average. I don't know yet that he's going to make it into the pool, DC, just because the Astros have not, really been a team where you look for strikeouts against left-handed pitching. So, and that price, I mean, you like Springs at 62, 63, 65. I know it's only a $400 difference, but I don't know. Springs doesn't really jump out to me on this slate, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have him in the pool or not.
Yeah, it makes sense. I do prefer Freeland to Springs if you're choosing between the two, mostly because of the price discount. I think the strikeout upside's higher for Freeland as well, which is a weird thing to say, but I do think it's true on this particular night. So, but I generally agree. Springs-Freeland combination feels like you're reaching a little bit right there.
Yeah, a little bit thin. You need a lot to happen from those 5 and 6K bats. And you need, the most important thing is you need Freeland and Springs not to get completely blown up and go negative, which is unfortunately in the real range of outcomes more frequently than you would like for a pitcher in DFS. All right. Next game in Minnesota, the Nationals continuing their trek across the country here. It is the Nats and the Twins. Mackenzie Gore, 8,700 DC, coming off a very rough performance, his worst performance of the season. Other than that, he's been pretty good. And Zebby Matthews, 7,100. Zebby knocked around a little bit by the Rockies in Colorado. He's all the way down to 7,100 against the Nats here. These are intriguing prices for both of these pitchers. There's talent in both of these pitchers. It isn't a park that we often target for looking for a ton of offense. What are you thinking about with the Twins and the Nats?
Yeah, so Gore, I opined that the All-Star break might do him some good. That did not prove true in his first start. Worst outing of the season for Gore, was absolutely shelled. Negative 13.35 DraftKings point in that one for Mackenzie Gore.
Yep.
I expect him to bounce back, I guess, although he was kind of a little bit shaky prior to the break as well. So not quite sure what's going on with Mackenzie Gore. I think the default assumption should be that he'll kind of get back to his usual self, which is a really high strikeout arm. So, yeah, Mackenzie Gore looks like it'd be around 15% owned. That feels about right to me, maybe a little high. I think I'm a little bit lower on him than that number at 8,700, but wouldn't fault anyone for taking a chance on Mackenzie Gore. The upside, I think, is certainly there for him to be a top 2 pitcher on the slate. That's true for Gore. I think pretty much every time he takes the mound. Definitely true against the Twins. Not really on the Twins' bats. Honestly, I could see playing either side of this Zebby versus the Nationals. I do think Zebby's a pretty talented pitcher. The results haven't shown it so far, though. I mean, he's got an ERA over 6, a whip of 1.6. Tons of base runners allowed from Zebby. Another pitcher where the splits appear to be legitimate. He's getting hit hard by lefties, which is not what you want to be against this Nationals lineup, who do swing all of their good bats, essentially swinging from the left side. They've got 5 lefties in a row leading off the slate, obviously led by C.J. Abrams and James Wood, who I've been very high on all year, and they come through a lot. And it usually does seem like it's the two of them together. They both get there. Obviously, they both swing from the left side, so they have, good matchups good matchups or bad matchups together. I think they are very, very fun. I think low-owned mini stack against Zebby Matthews in what should be pretty good hitting conditions in target field. So I like the Nationals stack here a little bit as a sneaky option. Beyond Abrams and Wood, they are pretty cheap, so you can afford it. And I think it'll go low-owned as well. So yeah, I could see playing that. And then, Matthews, 7,100. I do think he's a decent option, even with all the lefties in there for the Nationals.
Matthews price point nice, 7,100. And this is a boom-bust Nationals offense. The thing with Zebby, of course, is, there isn't a long leash here, right? He's going to go 5. Maybe he'll go 6. Yeah. That's about the extent of it. All right. Next game on the slate in Los Angeles, Brian Wu at 10.5 DC. Jose Soriano, 7,200. This game lower scoring last night than we expected, lower scoring than I think the field expected, and really the opposite outcome in terms of the offense that was put on the board. The one thing that I've noticed all day long about Brian Wu's spot here is the projection is awfully low compared to what it normally is. And that's striking to me because he's a pitcher that ordinarily you would say, hey, I'm going to use this guy. He's the one Mariners pitcher that you could use dependably and reliably on the road. Maybe not so much here tonight, but the same thing applies for Soriano. He's got a lower projection than normal too, and he hasn't been yet the consistent pitcher that we want to see despite the increase in strikeout percent, despite the increase in his ceiling outcomes. Just hasn't happened game to game. I think this one's a little bit tricky in Anaheim.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kind of a tricky spot all the way around here. I do think Wu is still usable, but and like you said, he's still been very good away from Seattle. But like pretty much every Mariners pitcher every year, not quite as good as he is when he's pitching in Seattle. Does need to pitch or have to pitch a pretty good hitting environment here against, frankly, I know they disappointed last night, but this Angels lineup, as it currently stands, it is not, a cakewalk for any pitcher. And Wu, again, a very good arm, but, not the same strikeout caliber of arm that we see from other pitchers that are typically priced over 10K. 10.5K for Wu on the road against a dangerous lineup in good hitting conditions feels like a lot for me, especially on a slate where I have mentioned I do really like most of the expensive bats. So I'm probably out on Wu. I won't be shocked if he put up 25 points and was SP1 on this slate, but even that, I think you're going to need 25 plus if you're paying 10.5K for a pitcher tonight. Not sure Wu's going to get there. Soriano, I think, is more interesting. It is a good strikeout matchup against these Mariners. It's really, at least for me, hard to know which version of Soriano is going to show up on any given night. But we've seen the upside enough from him, especially recently, that I think he's a worthwhile play. I do think his upside is intact in this matchup. And he's 7,200, right? So you're getting a discount on that dice roll for a pitcher who's hard to predict. But I think volatility in general is good. You want the volatile players. I'll take a shot. I'd rather have a shot at 10 or 30, than a guaranteed 20, all things being equal. So I do think Soriano, one of those few pitchers who at a low price point could give you a big game, especially in this matchup. I like Soriano quite a bit here, even if there's certainly risk of him blowing up. But at 7,200, I do like the play.
Yeah, you want the upside, right? You want the pitchers with upside. If you go through this slate, Soriano and Wu, both pitchers with upside. If I had to pick a side here, I'd probably lean the Soriano side, just the way that projections are going. But I still think I might be out on both of these pictures here tonight, just the way that things set up.
Did Uncle T run? Did he go to Big T? Did he text him and tell him about the show? I mean, Big T's watching the show.
I mean, the thing about Uncle T is he would last about 45 seconds in a federal penitentiary. I mean, he wouldn't even be shivved. I don't even think they would waste the shiv on him. They would just beat the piss out of him.
No, he's a runner. He would run away, JT. He'd be safe. He's
very upsetting. Very upsetting. I'm very disappointed in Uncle T. He's out of town. What? He left his phone, Uncle T?
Yeah,
did he leave a phone? How did you get the message to him?
I wasn't
did you send him a pigeon
that you drove to his house in the last 20 minutes. It would have been a text message.
Did you send a message in the bottle, Uncle T? Is that what you did? Oh my God, you would have zero issues with the pen. Not if you behave this way. Very, very disappointing. Very, very disappointing. All right. That's enough talking about Uncle T. I'm very upset, actually. Should we put him in timeout, Uncle DC?
No, I want to see what else he's got to say. He's all over the place on this Friday.
I gave it a thought. Putting him in timeout. All right, let's move on to the last game of the night. This game in San Francisco, the Mets and the Giants. For the Mets, DC Clay Holmes, man, it started off this season. Met fans were talking about how he was the second coming of Jacob deGrom. What a great signing. This guy is going to be a Cy Young. Now he's got 4 straight games with under 10 DraftKings points. So it hasn't gone very well for Clay Holmes. On the other side, the Giants found their offensive stroke on their recent road trip, particularly at the end of it against the Atlanta Braves. Of course, different matchup tonight. And then on the other side, Logan Webb, 9,300, coming off a couple of down performances here. It's going to be like usual, cool. Wind is not a factor as much in this ballpark. Mets, Giants. I don't think I need to 5-man either of these teams. DC, what are your thoughts on this game?
I can't stop laughing about Uncle T, just adamant that he would have zero issues in the It's one of those hypotheticals, JT, that we're probably never going to find out the answer to, but
probably not unless we can frame it.
It might be worth a frame job on Uncle T to find out. Anyway, back to baseball. I'm with you on Clay Holmes. I mean, he's like the definition of a nibbler, right? He just doesn't have the stuff to put away hitters. I got to look at what happened in the chat now. Yeah. So I'm out on Clay Holmes. I don't think I can get to the Giants here in this park.
Yeah.
Is the Giants really going to put up 10 plus runs? I would be very surprised, even though I'm not a fan of Clay Holmes. And then Logan Webb, I mean, he kind of has the same thing going on that we talk about with the Mariners pitchers, where the numbers, when you get him in San Francisco this year and every year, are just very, very strong, kind of true ace-like numbers. I don't love targeting this Mets team, but you get a discount with Webb. I mean, 9,300 is a pretty nice price point for him. He's super consistent. I don't think either of us expect many pitchers to put up huge performances. So the 20 to 25 that I think Webb gets you, it could be good at 9,300. So I do like Logan Webb. He is one of my favorite spend-up pitchers on the slate. I like Eovaldi a little bit more, but I do have Webb above Imanaga, Pivetta, and Wu. I do kind of like that Eovaldi and Webb pay up if you've got a cheaper stack that you like. So in on Webb, out on the Mets, mostly out on the Giants, and no way I'm playing any Clay Holmes on this slate.
And that's the decision point here is Webb is projected to be around 30% owned. The Mets offense, they've kind of just done enough to win, right? Even in games where they put up 4, 5, 6 runs, it seemed like they're doing just enough to win. Now they go on the road. I don't know if I want to match the field on Logan Webb just because the strikeout upside is not always there for the Mets, but
Yep.
I do want to have some of him in the pool. Give us your thoughts on matching Webb to the ownership or not, while the chat tells us which one of the Niehaus brothers, not brothers, but which one of the 2 Niehauses that we know would survive in prison, has a better chance to survive in prison. What are your thoughts on matching your ownership of Webb to the field?
How about the chat talks about Logan Webb and I talk about the Niehaus prison prospects? No,
Clay Holmes' nickname from here on out is the Nibbler. The Nibbler.
The Nibbler.
Darnell, Eovaldi, and Cash for me.
Yeah. So right now, our friends at SaberSim have ownership right around 25% for Kramer, Webb, and Eovaldi.
Yeah.
I do like Webb the least of those 3, if those ownerships prove true. But I do like Webb to some degree, just not quite as much as Eovaldi, and definitely not as much as Dean Kramer. But yeah, Webb, I think, should be on the short list for starting pitching options tonight. On what's a pretty narrow starting pitcher pool for me. Most of these guys I'm kind of uninterested in, but Webb definitely makes the cut. I think he's a pretty good play tonight.
DC, who's the most important pitcher to success tonight?
It's gonna be Mean Dean Kramer against the Rockies. We'll get started early, right? First game of the slate, top of the first. He'll be out there. Hopefully, gets the lineup moving in the right direction. But just too good of a matchup for a pitcher who's pitching pretty well right now. I'll eat the chalk on Dean Kramer.
I will probably ramp up Nathan Eovaldi's exposure here to right around 50 to 52%, something like that. In my lineup groups, someone says the Giants' prices are tough. I mean, the Giants' prices are enormously cheap for, again, it's not the greatest park, but pretty cheap pricing for the Giants. DC, what's the most important offense to your success tonight?
Offense. I think I'm going back to the Yankees here against Taijuan Walker, who I just don't think has much left in the tank. So much power potential, and all the hitters I like are hitting right next to each other at the top of the order. So I do like that Yankees stack. I think they've got the best chance to break the slate tonight. So give me some of those Bronx Bombers in New York tonight.
I really like the pricing on this Red Sox team here against Emmett Sheehan. So I think they're going to be a team that I'm a little bit overweight on. Give me a contrarian team that you're going to play tonight that at a little bit, while you're in your 5 lineups, what's one team that maybe you will play that other people may not consider?
I think the Astros will be low owned against Jeffrey Springs, who is a pitcher I want to target against. Talked about that top of their lineup looks pretty good and is pretty cheap too. Altuve 4,600, but everybody else $3,500 or less can fit them in with good pitching and some good one-offs. So yeah, the Astros top of the lineup I think looks good against Springs.
I think I'm going to go with the Mariners. The home run upside here, and when Jose Soriano is bad, he's really, really bad. It goes off the rails, gives up home runs, gives up a ton of runs, and I can see that happening here tonight. All right, final thoughts on the slate, DC?
Should be a good one. Keep an eye out on the weather with Kansas City, but yeah, I do think it's one to narrow down the pitching pool. Hopefully the combination of Dean Kramer and Eovaldi comes through, at least for me.
There you go, Donpla. There are 2 pitchers for you for GPP, so enjoy those. For members in here, the core plays will be up sometime in the next half hour. Playbook, I'm sure, is already up. There will be the slate builder is up. We may not get the boom report tonight because Stats and the crew are at the live golf final. But don't worry, everyone else will be in Discord answering your questions. For DC, I'm JT. Good luck in your contest tonight.